Sneakers and Cleats, the podcast. Welcome back to the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. It is Monday, March 11th, also known as free agency opening today in the NFL. This is episode 83. Matt Roy, Chuck McKinnick, Don Harris on here. It is a wild day in football free agency as the legal tampering period opens, which is an oxymoron. But it's open, and the Cowboys are not ready for business. But we'll get to that in a second. How are you guys? How was the weekend?
Great. Yeah, no complaints. Ready to get back at it. It's a Monday. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, we
got a lot going on.
Yeah, a lot going on Monday. You got the Spurs at home tonight. Get to that if we can. And try and fit in as much as we can here in 30, 35 minutes. So, as always, we start with the number game. There's not a lot of good 83s. Andre Reed was the one that came to mind for me for the number, but that's also just because I just watched the
Where's Ricky Sanders?
I just watched the Four Falls of Buffalo.
Great Southwest Texas Bobcat, right?
Yep.
Ricky Sanders.
Over 200 yards receiving against the Broncos in that Super Bowl.
See?
That's my sweet mate.
Where's
Where's Ricky Sanders? And then after that Super Bowl, they went to the White House and Ronald Reagan called him out by name and threw him a football, and Ricky did a really bad dance.
Oh, he had his moment, though.
He did have his moment. Yep.
See, I never would have thought of that. So I got Andre Reed and Wes Welker on here as players. Andre Reed, obviously Bills Hall of Famer, lost all 4 Super Bowls with them in the early 90s. But when I think of 83, I think of the 83 quarterback class. John Elway, Todd Blackledge, Jim Kelly, Tony Eason, Ken O'Brien, and Dan Marino, 6 quarterbacks in the first round. None of them like truly busts. They were all like had decent careers. Obviously, John Elway, Jim Kelly, and Dan Marino are 3 of the best of all time.
Didn't Elway Colts had number 1 pick, and he said
he forced the trade.
Baseball.
Yeah, he was a hell of a center fielder. Forced his way out of
Stanford,
yeah. Correct. Forced his way out of the Colts and into the Bronco organization.
The late great Golden Richards, who passed away in the last month or so, Dallas Cowboy. Touchdown in off the halfback pass in Super Bowl 12. And our good friend Wayne McGarity wore 83 for the Cowboys.
He sure did.
Just eternally naming names that I don't know.
Clark High School, Clark Cougar, and Texas Longhorn Matt, who owns the longest touchdown in the history of the OU-Texas Red River rivalry, a 93-yard TD.
Now I know.
There you go.
Now I know. I'm going to speed through these a little bit because we do have so much to get to. A little bit. Also in 83, the Redskins beat the Dolphins 27-17. John Riggins was Super Bowl MVP. Joe Theismann was the regular season MVP. Bear Bryant and George Halas both died in 1983, 2 football legends. Orioles defeated the Phillies 4-1 in the World Series in 83. Sixers swept the Lakers to win the NBA title. Islanders swept the Oilers to win the Stanley Cup. And Jim Colbert won the Valero that year. So
Moses Malone with the 4-5-4 prediction, and they ended up winning a 4-5-4.
Well, he almost got it right.
He almost did.
So,
and that was Chuck, by the way, 83 Orioles Phillies.
Cal Ripken.
I was a freshman in college taking a video editing class, and that was the first music video I ever edited.
Nice.
It was highlights of the 83 World Series.
Cutting tape to tape.
And I think it was a Van Halen song that I used.
There was no Avid software back then.
Everybody wants some.
Oh, it was tape to tape for sure. It was like a 3/4 inch.
Well, with NFL free agency going on, I don't know why I wrote this rundown at 8:30 this morning, but here's pretty much what we can do to it. Because in the last 10, 15 minutes, everything has changed. We will try and keep you as up to date as possible. Obviously, we're filming this or recording this at 1:40. Don't say anything about the word filming. We're doing this at 1:40. Kirk Cousins just signed with the Atlanta Falcons for 4 years. There's been a lot of stuff on the Cowboys front. I'll run through that really quick. Dorrance Armstrong going to the Commanders. Tyler Biadasz going to the Commanders. Jordan Lewis probably going to the Commanders. And Tony Pollard signs with the Titans. And nobody has signed with the Cowboys yet. So what do you guys take? What do you guys take from the early actions of free agency as I keep my phone on and watching Adam Schefter's tweets?
Well, I think what I take away from it is Dan Quinn is going as a head coach with what he knows, and that may or may not be a bad thing for the Cowboys, because when you're familiar with Biadasz and Armstrong and Lewis, you're like, okay, those guys are great. But they may not be. You might just have your blinders on.
Well, I think if you're trying to build culture, those are three pretty nice pillars to have. If you're, it's what he did when he got to Dallas.
I think
he brought some of
Armstrong's
his
the
own
best of the
guys.
3.
But I mean, like Jordan Lewis, classy guy
Yeah.
coming back from a major injury. He's going to be great with the press too, but that guy's a dog. They just went out and got some very, very talented DBs and kind of made him the odd man out, but he was definitely a luxury to have, and good to see that he really came on strong towards the end of the year as that foot got even stronger.
Well, we know Biadic likes to fight. He's a dog. And
Yeah.
Armstrong, I think, was very underrated as a Cowboy.
The one that happened first today was the Tony Pollard deal. He leaves 3 years, $24 million to go to the Titans, obviously replacing Derrick Henry. They will not re-sign Derrick Henry. He partners up with Tajay Spears in Tennessee. I think that's more money than I thought he was going to get.
Me too.
$8 million a year for 3 seasons is a little bit more than I thought he was going to get. And I thought that was actually kind of in the range for the Cowboys. Maybe is $7-8 million. That's less than the franchise tag was last year.
Me too.
So when I saw that he's signing somewhere else for $8 million, it made me think, oh, so the Cowboys just don't want to pay the running back position.
That's what I got from it.
That's exactly what I thought of.
Well, we'll see. Or did Tennessee overpay? Because, I mean, the story was out there that if the numbers were close.
The Eagles just signed Saquon Barkley.
Okay.
Sorry.
Another player off the board. But if
how much?
I don't know.
Keep
going, I'll get it for you in a second.
Never mind. No, I had a train of thought and you cut me off.
I know. I'm sorry.
To hell with you, Matthew.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to Adam Schefter this.
Yeah.
Tony Pollard.
There's only one of him, and there's 3 of us.
Tony Pollard.
I forgot what I was going to say.
All right. Well, Saquon just signed to the Eagles for 3 years, $37.75 million. So roughly 12 and a half, 13 a year. Obviously that was never in the Cowboys price range, but Saquon now going to the Eagles takes him off the board for the Texans, and Nick Caserio was rumored to be really aggressively pursuing Saquon. So I'll be interested to see now what avenue the Texans go down. Chuck, what avenue do you think the Texans go down now with Josh Jacobs already off the board? He's going to your Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, what's up with that? I mean, why?
Aaron Jones can only do so much.
Well, I know, and he's not been available every week, but I don't know. It just seems like money could have been better spent than to have a 1-2 punch. But it's a pretty damn good 1-2 punch to have, I suppose.
The Texans are the one team that have cap space enough to go after Henry.
Exactly, and that's why I'm a little confused about Saquon, because they really wanted Saquon in Houston, and they have the cap space, they have the draft picks, they have the young quarterback on a young quarterback salary, they have the flexibility there. So I'm kind of surprised that they didn't get Saquon because they have more to spend than anybody else.
Maybe they got something better.
I mean, maybe they get Derrick Henry. Who knows? So that's the next question. Is now that the Cowboys have been rumored and linked to Derrick Henry for weeks and months now.
They're not going to pay that. Jerry said he's not going to pay that.
But I think it also just told us by obviously Tony signing somewhere else, and then we see how much Saquon's getting. Derrick Henry's probably going to get somewhere in between those two. So now we pretty much know the Cowboys are not going to be going after Derrick Henry. I mean, at least that's what the tea leaves read to me, right?
Yes,
that's what Jerry's been saying from his bus. Is we're not going to have one guy take up 3 players' positions. So Henry would take up a bunch.
Yeah, Henry would take up $10 to $12 million a year, I'm going to guess.
Yeah, and you still got to pay 88 for sure this year. And then you got to think about paying 11.
It also begs the question, what does an ideal free agency look like for the Cowboys this season? I mean, you've already lost 3 key contributors from last year. Dorrance Armstrong was really good.
They didn't want Biadic back. They had no plans to resign.
Still, Dorrance Armstrong really good up front in an already messed up and weak D line because of your horrible run defense. You now lose Biadic, who, whether they didn't want him back or they did, you're losing the center of your offense, and then you're losing your lead running back. So all you have right now is Rico. No, all you have right now is Deuce Vaughn, because I think Rico is also a free agent. So they have to do something in this running back room.
Sure, they will. They got some money. They're a step behind. They're still clearing the Zach Martins of the world, figuring out what they're going to do with Dak. What are they going to do if they're going to release somebody after June 1st to clear more cap space money?
Gallup.
13.
Michael Gallup. So they're just a step behind when it comes to getting the money first and then signing the free agent.
That, and plus they do what they've done the last couple of years. Just let this free agent frenzy die down a little bit. There's going to be a lot of guys looking for jobs that will be willing to work for less.
Aren't you a little surprised that they didn't fight harder to keep Tony, though?
No.
Really?
Wasn't physical enough. Jerry said, I mean, it wasn't even reading tea leaves. Jerry was very blatantly PO'd at McCarthy and Quinn after the Packers game because we can't stop the run and we can't run. And one reason they couldn't run more effectively was because I think Tony Pollard was pretty much one-dimensional. And, I mean, he's a good back, but he couldn't get the tough short yards. He just didn't have the physicality, the hammer.
Yeah, Rob Thompson, our friends over at the SA Sports Star, said it this morning on their show that you need someone who can go get you a yard. And
Yeah.
Tony Pollard, at his best, could not go get them a yard.
Well, at his best, he could, but after the injury, it was a little suspect. But he had his moments towards the end. I can see why the Titans are giving him the money because he's going to be great in the room. He's a pro's pro. But yes, they need somebody who's more consistent in picking up the yard.
Yeah, this is nothing against Tony as a person. Just as a player, he wasn't exactly what they needed last year. He wasn't the banger that they needed, but that they lost with Zeke.
I think he was more than a change of pace scat back, which was what everybody pigeonholed him in when they had Zeke. But he was less than the hammer Josh Jacobs, Aaron Jones, Derrick Henry, Zeke Elliott. And they need that guy.
Well, he was a pretty damn good hammer the 2 years ago when he and Zeke were sharing the load. In fact, it was obvious who was the best player on the team.
Yeah, he was quicker.
He was the best offensive weapon 2 years ago. Ask the 49ers.
All right.
That's true.
Let me ask you this. The Falcons are signing Kirk Cousins. Let me give me an over or under whether you think this is too much or too little on his contract. 4 years, $180 million.
Oh, this guy's made so much money playing football.
$45 million a year, only $50 million guaranteed for Kirk Cousins going to Atlanta.
Well, I mean,
too much, too little.
It's about right. If the Cowboys are going to give Dak 57,
at least.
Yeah, I mean,
I think Dak's the Mayfield number. I think Dak's $30 million a year.
Dak's going to get double that.
I know.
If Kirk Cousins is getting 45.
God, Kirk Cousins.
What's the grudge against Kirk
It's just good, clean love. I don't have anything against him, honestly. It's just amazing that you can have a resume like his where he gets most of his yards when they're getting blown out. And he's won some ball games and he's good. But the money that this guy has made in his career,
more power to him.
God bless him.
Packers just lost John Runyon as well. He's going to the Giants. I'm just updating as I get as I see tweets. Okay. I'm just updating everything as I go.
I've already felt that in real time, Matthew.
Sorry, I really didn't mean to cut you off earlier.
Oh no, you did. But let us never let that happen again.
If it wasn't Saquon, I wouldn't have done it.
What Matt doesn't understand working with two guys our age is if you cut us off, we're not going to remember what we were talking about.
It was right there. This was going to be the greatest podcast ever.
Speaking of which, thank you to everyone who listened to our last podcast. It is the second most downloaded episode we've ever had, episode 82, talking about Victor and his not being disgruntled, but everyone in the national media saying he's disgruntled.
That's because Bob Gambert and the web team put out a misleading headline.
We don't have to talk about that. Anyway,
is Wemby leaving the Spurs? Getting tired of the Spurs?
Just asking questions.
And then, just ask a question, and then we take the heat on the comments. Whoever posted this needs to be fired.
How many times should I have been fired?
I think he's doing a great job.
He's the master clickbaiter.
Anyway,
it's his job.
Thank you to everyone who listened. I hope they enjoyed the episode, and hopefully this one does equally as well or better.
Did you?
Hey, we got a question.
Were you clear?
Yeah.
Riojas asks if there's any updates on Gallup because
Gallup's going to be released. He's going to be a post June 1 cut. So they're gonna
yeah, they've got like a week.
Yeah, they're gonna designate him for release, or they're gonna trade him.
His agent has been given permission to seek a trade.
Yeah, they might get a 5th, 6th, 7th round pick for him, or if they can't negotiate a trade, then they'll release him post June 1st, so they can split up his cap number over 2 seasons instead of taking a $9 million cap hit this year.
And we got a question from Armando Gonzalez III. Does Tyler's loss today change the Cowboys draft plans? I would think center now becomes a big need, or is that a position better addressed in free agency?
I think offensive line is going to be a big issue for them in the draft anyway. They already lost Tyron Smith. He's not going to be coming back. You have a hole at left tackle unless you move Tyler Smith over. So you're going to have a hole at either left guard or left tackle. So then now you're missing Biotish. So, I mean, maybe you can fill it in with one of the young guys who played last year, but they're going to have to draft O-line regardless. Right.
Amen. Yeah. There's going to be guys out there. I mean, the Titans just released their center from what I understand. I mean, they're going to be players. They're going to be more players than there are jobs available. So I think it's wise that the Cowboys are sitting this early part of the frenzy out.
This isn't abnormal for the Cowboys, though. They oftentimes don't take part in the initial frenzy, for lack of a better term, of free agency. Why do you think that is, that they just don't do that?
I think you've got to just really, really, really like the player. I mean, the Packers get accused of the same thing, but every time they've gone all in on a guy, like when they got Woodson, I can think of a couple other guys, they didn't miss. The time they're paying them these huge dollars, and you're thinking, what are they doing? This is going to be a cap sucker. And then at the end of the day, you go, well, they didn't whiff on Woodson.
When's the last Amari Cooper, the last big one the Cowboys went after?
They traded him from the Raiders. And we're reacting to most of these in real time for everybody. So these are all of our initial thoughts.
Yeah, spitballing.
Yeah, as I interrupt Chuck.
Yes. So I'll go on.
Sorry, we'll hug it out later.
What were you talking about?
So
I don't remember.
The moves that the Eagles are making are kind of interesting, though. I always just, whenever I see a move from either the Giants, the Commanders, or the Eagles, I always just think a team hasn't repeated in the East in 18 years. So now I'm thinking, okay, which team is going to win the NFC East next year? As we know that the Cowboys won't, not because the Cowboys haven't done anything, but only because it never happens that you repeat as champion. So I'm like, okay, the Eagles are signing Saquon. Does this mean they have the next spot? But then they lost Jason Kelce. They lost Fletcher Cox. This is like a turning of the tide for the Philadelphia Eagles, which in turn creates a problem for the Dallas Cowboys.
We'll see at the end of the day. I mean, the Cowboys' priorities are their big three. And, you fill out, who the hell is Tyler Biotish, right? I mean, you'll fill out your roster and you'll fill out your lineup with guys. That's a big get, Saquon Barkley, for Philadelphia. At least it's splashy if he stays healthy. But again, the Cowboys' priorities have to be Dak, CD, Micah, a running back. Everything else takes care of itself in time.
I always just think as well, Philly signing Saquon is basically signing him away from his prior team. Do you think that was part of the motivation as well? It's like,
I see it. Commanders, what are you doing with the Cowboys free agents right now? You're thinking, inside the division, going to be interesting.
Yeah, and will they do something early or will they wait? I mean, there are players out there. They need a linebacker bad. They need somebody that's going to fit into that, that Mike linebacker role. And, that Kendricks guy that has got ties to the D coordinator from their days in Minnesota, he's out there, big, physical, strong football player.
You see that a lot of times, like even in college now, you see like if a coach leaves, he tries to bring players with him. I think you saw that with Shadur Sanders and Dion up at Colorado. And you see that a lot, and you see that in the NFL too. When Sean Payton signed with the Broncos, he brought over basically every New Orleans Saint that he could ever think of that wasn't nailed down, every coach that he would ever do. You see that a lot. So I'm not surprised that Dan Quinn has gone after these guys in the NFC East. But when you see like three guys signed almost immediately from the Cowboys to the Commanders, it is still a little jarring to see, so you really know what his plan was here.
Yeah. And, again, it's addition and subtraction. You're adding those guys and you're taking them away from the Cowboys.
And, again, I'll throw this out there. Not necessarily maybe a bad thing for the Cowboys.
I think the Biotish loss is a little bit more than you're giving him credit for.
I never liked him.
What?
I didn't think he was all that. I think he got thrown into the job because, at the time that he, who did he replace?
Travis Frederick, wasn't he? He came in right after Travis Frederick left.
I think he was serviceable.
Those are also tough shoes to fill.
Did he ever make a Pro Bowl?
That I don't think so. No.
I mean, I don't think he was.
The Pro Bowl's a joke now, though. So.
I think he's an average NFL starting center.
So
easily replaceable.
So you think he's not hard to replace? So out of the three, the guys, or let's call it four, because they're probably not going to bring back Jordan Lewis. Out of those four guys, which one's the biggest loss?
Armstrong.
He's the hardest to replace.
I don't know about hard to replace, but he put up numbers. He was a force on that defensive front. And Jordan Lewis is really good, but he ended up being a backup.
Do you think that they let Armstrong walk because they already had this crap running rush defense, and they're like, you know what, we need a bigger body in the middle. We need to change the style of defense here to get it more ugly and a little bit maybe less finesse.
It could be just as simple as they like the player, they just don't like what it's going to cost them now that they're in the open market.
They've got to sign CeeDee Lamb, and what they're going to do is take $1 million from this guy and $2 million from that guy and $3 million for this guy. So instead of paying this guy $6 million, we're going to get a guy for $4 million. Instead of paying Tony Pollard $8 million, we're going to get a running back for $6 million. All those savings adds up to 10, 12 might be the difference in getting CD done or not.
I mean, I would let CD walk and sign the other guys, but that's just me.
That
no
ain't
more
happening.
And it's not going to happen, but I would like it to. That's enough for free agency for now until I interrupt one of these two again
You're good.
here in a little bit. Let's talk about the Spurs real quick. The Spurs defeated the Warriors 126-113 on Saturday. They play the Warriors again tonight with a little bit more reinforcements since they were down Vassell and Wemby on Saturday. But no Wemby, no Vassell, no problem for him. I mean, that was one of the more impressive showings that I've seen from this young core.
Agree. They play differently when Wemby's not in there. You can run a little more. You got a little more movement. So it was looked to me like some guys were trying to show some things that, hey, we're not a one-man team, and it really showed over these last couple games.
Steph's out, was out, going to be out again tonight. Warriors are shorthanded too. It was very impressive. Malachi Branham has really come on. The Barlow kid, like Chuck's saying, I think they really got the message after the All-Star break that this is your last 20 games. Do you want to be on the Wemby wagon next year? Everybody's being evaluated, and nobody's safe, not even Devin Vassell. So I think they're all in tryout mode, and they shared the ball, as Chuck said. They shot the three. When the ball goes in from 3-point, you have a much better chance to win. And they've been a horrible 3-point shooting team all year, and they went in the last few games.
That was one thing I wanted to ask you about: is which young guys are showing you the most lately? Like they've started playing a lot better. They've won more games. They've been in a lot more games. Even the Houston game where Wemby tweaked his ankle and stuff, I think they showed that they are still that competitive, driving team. I've been kind of impressed with Malachi lately. Malachi and Blake Wesley, I think, are really showing that they can be quality role players on a good team.
I just like the fact that it's showing more often than not lately that they're willing to play both ends of the court for longer periods of time.
Yeah. I think Barlow's going to be a guy that's going to be on this roster 3 years from now. I'm still jury out on Devin, Devin's really good. And I could see him being the third or fourth best option if they go out and get an all-star to pair next to Wemby. Sohan's the guy that I'm just he can be great and he can be awful. And I just don't know which one he's going to end up becoming.
I read an article from who was it? It was on ESPN about Sohan and his randomness of how he plays. It's either like he's so good or he's terrible. There's no in between. It's the beauty of the randomness of Jeremy Sohan.
Yeah.
And it's like I just want him to capture a little bit more of the good and stop with the random turnovers or the weird fouls or the bad plays. It's like, dude,
Or the awkward missed layups.
Yeah, like it's the randomness of his game is so infuriating.
He's a great athlete with so many great attributes: length, jumping ability, defensive mindset, quickness. But then he's just not a skilled basketball player, which you take a chance on him. You think you can teach him some of that. They've done it with others that they've had. Kawhi Leonard couldn't shoot at all when they first got him. And his shooting has gotten better, especially his 3-point shooting gotten better. But I just don't know. I don't know what the future holds for these guys.
So if I was to ask you right now today that you get to keep 3 players from this roster, excluding Wemby, what 3 players would it be that you would want to take into the
Now, do we
future?
take into consideration what kind of money they're going to make?
No.
Okay.
Excluding the money that they're making now or in the future.
Okay, then it's Devin, it's Sohan, and it's Barlow.
Chuck?
All I can think of is Charles Bassey. Just
Really?
give me somebody that's going to play their ass off all the time, 24/7, both ends of the floor. Charles Bassey.
Why not Keldon, Don?
Because I think we've seen enough of Keldon to know what he is, and I think at the price tag that he's going to be at, he's going to be expendable. He's going to be the guy that's included in a trade. I like
fair.
Keldon a lot. I like him a lot. He's a good player, but I think we've seen his ceiling, and I don't think we've seen Devin and Sohan's ceiling.
I would say give me Jeremy, give me Devin, but I would take Trey. I think that Trey would be one of those
I do
guys
too,
that I would
yeah.
keep. I think I like how he plays. He knows exactly what he is. He knows exactly what he can contribute, and he does the good.
It
he
looks
does
like
the little things.
basketball when he's on the floor.
Yeah.
He does the little things well, and he knows exactly who he is and who he has to get the ball to. Because he's not the superstar. He knows he's not the superstar, and he gives the ball to the superstars.
That's
So,
true.
I think that Trey has been. If they started Trey all year and didn't start the Jeremy Sohan
They'd have 10
experiment,
more wins.
at least.
I agree.
I mean, Trey is he's a very good basketball player, and he's also great in the community here. All these guys are. But
Here's how weird I am that you just brought that up and said that the Sohan point guard experiment. When you said that, it triggered the fact that last night, when I got up in the middle of the night to go to the restroom, I was dreaming about why they stayed with the Sohan experiment for so long. Who else dreams of stuff like that? And I was mad, and Pop was mad at me or something. And I was questioning why they stuck with the Sohan experiment for so long.
So Thursday, I think we need to get a psychologist on, and she needs to evaluate what your dreams are meaning.
It's weird.
Because that's pretty odd.
It's weird.
No, you can't help it,
No,
man. That's where it's at.
It's definitely weird.
Yeah.
All right, so this week we got we have a guest coming on Thursday, so you guys won't be here on Thursday. So I want to ask you guys this now. The I-35 series is going to be playing this week in Austin. They have the one trip that the defending finals champs make to Texas or to San Antonio. It's going to be in Austin, Texas, and not in San Antonio.
Denver only plays here once all year?
I believe so, yes.
No, can't be.
I'm pretty sure.
And they'll probably rest everybody.
They're a Western Conference team. They got to play 2 games.
I'm pretty sure that's what happened at the beginning. That's what I read at the beginning of the season. But I'll go check that. But anyway,
That's weird.
you still have the defending finals champs not coming to your home. You're going to your second home, I guess, in Austin. Give me a quick 2 minutes on what each of you make of these I-35 series games, and kind of stop all of the rumors that people
What?
that
They
the
can't be
Spurs
there.
are leaving.
There can't be those anymore. They're building a new arena at the Institute of Texas Culture site. Come on. It's over. I get Tony Gonzalez and those guys are campaigning on that stuff, trying to rile people up a year ago. It's over. They're not going anywhere. They got a $500 million rocket lock on Terra. They're going to raise the Institute of Texas Cultures and build them a brand new arena right there. It's over. Calm down.
Yeah, you can't blame a team for trying to spread the brand. And Austin is a huge television market. I can't believe it's a top 40 television market now. I mean, I can by looking at the skyline, obviously.
It's 33.
No, we're 33.
No,
I thought.
sorry,
They're
it's-
38 or some 38.
Yeah, we're 33, you're right,
36,
sorry.
somewhere in there.
But
I
it's-
heard they were going to rename the team the Teslas. Is that true?
Yes.
The Teslas.
That's
Yeah.
right. There's that.
It's the Austin Musks.
So, yeah, I mean, what's the problem with playing a couple ball games? It all looks like a basketball court on TV. I mean, they're playing in Austin.
I mean, I get why.
Woo!
I get why they wouldn't want to, but I don't think it's not like the NFL where you take 1 out of 9 home games or 1 out of
Right.
8 home games away. You're taking 1 out of 41 or 2 out of 41. I mean, if they did half of their season up there, I would have an issue with it. But 2 games up in Austin, I don't think it's a big deal. I do think it's a big deal that I liked it last year better when they had Portland do it or a worse team. I would prefer to get the San Antonio fans to see Nikola Jokic against Wemby instead of the Austin fans. That is the argument that I buy.
Sure.
That I get.
Or if it's, if Brooklyn was any good or if it was Giannis's one and only, I get that.
Yeah.
For sure. But, as I said over a year ago when all this stuff was being hashed out by the Tommy Calverts of the world about, the Spurs, they want to leave. Where did Kareem Abdul-Jabbar break the NBA all-time scoring record?
Don't ask me. I didn't even know the people you were talking about earlier.
You don't know Kareem?
No, I do. I was saying when you were telling me about
He
83.
broke the record against the Jazz in Las Vegas because the Jazz played 2 or 3 home games a year in Las Vegas. Where did the mighty Boston Celtics, the Bill Russell, John Havlicek, Bob Cousy, greatest franchise of all time, for a solid decade, they played 3 to 5 home games a year in Hartford, Connecticut, to spread the brand. It's not a new thing. And it does. Were the Boston Celtics ever going to leave the vaunted Garden to go to Hartford? No. So everybody just needs to, they're going to take our breakfast tacos with them too.
Then I'd riot.
I don't know.
Then
what that
I'd riot.
means.
Stupid.
If they're going to take Taco Palenque too, I will fight somebody in the streets.
Taco Palenque is not San Antonio's. I think it's from the Valley.
It was the first Mexican restaurant that came in my head. Okay.
Laredo.
Came out of Acapulco and then established in Laredo first.
Luis
Luis
weighing in.
Luis
We
has
just had
to
this
be a-
conversation
the other day, didn't we,
expert.
Luis?
Of course, Luis
Yeah.
knows this. To further
Luis is puro Laredo.
2 things real quick. To further your point, Denver does come back to San Antonio, the second to last game of the
they're
second to
West-
last game of the season. To further your point, with this Kirk Cousins deal, $330 million guaranteed is what he's made in his career after this contract that he
It's
just got.
good to be Kirk
It's good to
Cousins.
be a
Hallelujah.
It's good to be a mediocre
Really?
quarterback, man.
And that goes a long way when you're buying Joseph A. Bank and the Fox logo stuff. See his wardrobe? He just wears like casual.
Yeah, he wears
stuff.
like
I mean,
he
yeah,
goes to Coles.
Give him his credit. I mean, he's obviously a better than average quarterback.
He's the Coles dad.
$330 million total.
$330 million will buy
Wears
you a lot.
Dockers.
It'll buy you a lot of
Bless Kirk
Dockers.
Cousins, man.
A lot of Dockers.
It'll buy you a lot of plaid t-shirts.
God
Didn't he
bless
win
Kirk
the
Cousins.
quarterback, Netflix special quarterback?
Yeah,
He won that, right?
Oh,
I mean,
100%.
Yeah.
Like him and Patrick Mahomes came off looking amazing after that thing.
And looking at that Atlanta team, as competitive as they are, he might be the missing link for all we know.
I mean, you
So,
look at that roster and you just need one person to
Right.
be able to get it to the skill players. That's
right.
it. Bijan, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. Now you put
Yeah.
Kirk Cousins into there. He might not have
Yeah.
the scrambling ability after his Achilles injury, but
Might not need it.
yeah, all he has to do is get it to the guy. That's all you
Right.
need to do. But all right, that's all we got for you on this edition of the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. There are no more signings as of 2:09 p.m. So when you hear this, you'll be hearing instant reaction that we got as we were riffing and interrupting and whatnot. So we do have a special guest, coming up on Thursday. Anthony Totri from PHNX, the Sun Devils podcast. He is in town. And he has decided and agreed to come on to the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. So we will tell him how much better Texas sports are than Arizona sports. So we will let him know that. That's all we got for you in the Sneakers and Cleats podcast today. Remember to download, rate, review, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, tell a friend, tell an enemy. We will see you right back here on Thursday with Anthony Totri. Until then, everyone, have a good week.